Twins.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Can you believe it? This is episode 17 already. And today I am so honored to have a real American hero as my guest. Antoinette could become the poster child of what my book, The Mosaic, speaks of. She calls herself an ordinary woman who became extraordinary. Let me tell you the story a little bit as a backdrop, okay? On August 19th, 2013, Antoinette Huff was a school bookkeeper. She was severely depressed that her husband of 33 years had recently left her, and she faced the daunting challenge of raising a son with multiple disabilities as a single mom. A few moments before she came into school, she received a devastating call, and it looked as if her world would crumble, it was crumbling all around her. Never did she think she would become a hero, saving more than close to 1,000 lives, a best-selling author, an international celebrity, or a guest of Michelle Obama's at the State of the Union address. The next day, August 20th, 2013, her life changed forever. Antoinette, an accidental hostage negotiator, used her experiences with challenging life issues to successfully convince an armed gunman who entered the Ronald E. McNair Discovery Learning Academy to give his AK-47 to her. This is the only school active shooter situation in the United States that ended without death and injury to school students, faculty, parents, or the shooter himself. Experienced hostage negotiators, law enforcement, and community leaders praised her intuitive yet textbook hostage negotiation. In her book, which she has right here, and I want her to hold it up for you, Prepared for a Purpose, which is available everywhere where books are sold, and obviously easily on Amazon.com, she tells that story. Antoinette, welcome from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being here on the Mosaic Podcast.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's great to be here with you today on the Mosaic Podcast.
I love you. I love you. Okay, there's where my notes are. Okay. Before we jump right into it, which we already have, I mean, this is, I just want people to sort of understand where all this comes from. How does someone become an American hero? And so I want to ask you, when you were a kid growing up, what did you want to be?
Married with children, a white picket fence house, and a car in the garage.
Okay.
I think that's what we all had as little girls growing up. You know, that was when our family said that if you had all those things, you made it. Back in the 60s, you didn't have dreams to be a doctor or a nurse or anything like that in my community. It was more or less, getting married, being able to have the children. You didn't go as far as our kids are able to experience, dream of, and now come in actually to reality of their lives. We just didn't have that. So for me, it was when I got my husband, got my kids, and that car in the garage, I knew I made
it. And did it feel, when you got to that point, did it feel like you wanted it to feel? Did that feel fabulous?
Well, I was married. I met my ex-husband when I was 13.
Wow.
And so for me, it felt like the fairy tale Cinderella life. I had my husband there who I adored. I had my 2 children there. We got up every morning and had breakfast together at the table. We ate lunch together. I cooked 3 meals a day before I went and worked at my job. I wanted to make sure that I was that Proverb 31 woman, that my husband and my children would be well pleased of.
Wow.
I modeled my life after that for 33 years.
Wow.
I will say in the process of that, though, I lost who I was.
Just tell me about that.
Well, what happens is, as women, what we do is when we get family and children and husbands, we lose ourselves in the process. We forget that at the end of the day, we are still somebody, and we forget to look in the mirror at ourselves in the midst of it all to be able to introduce ourselves to who we are. And so when you're doing that, you're so much in the routine of, I got to get up at 4. I do my prayer time in the morning at 4. By the time the kids come down at 5, they got breakfast on the table. And then I go in and getting everybody's lunch together, breakfast together, dinner together. And then I go out the door and go work my 3 jobs. And I come back home. All they have to do during the day while I'm at work is pull the bowls out the refrigerator because I've already prepared it that day before. And then when you get home, the routine starts all over with. You got homework, you got, getting ready for bed. That's our routine. So who comes in to say that in the midst of all our routine, it's all right to take some mommy time?
Yeah, no, 100%. But
Yes.
and also, like, something's very interesting to me because I think now with GPS systems in our cars, life becomes it becomes a model for how we live life. We put a destination into our car,
Yeah.
and it tells us exactly how to get there. So one of the reasons why I always wonder what did people want as a kid is because that's the GPS system. That's the place where we put in. Nowhere in your GPS system was what Antoinette needed or thought she should be. She wanted to be a wife and have children and have a car in the garage. And so it's really interesting in some ways. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, for me, I actually, when growing up, me and my mom one time, and it's in my book, we moved 14 times in 1 year.
14 times in 1 year.
14 times in 1 year. I was never, as a child, stable enough to be able to have those type of dreams. Yes, I wanted to go to college. Yes, when I got older, I said, okay, I would like to be a computer scientist. But those things were never accessible to me. I couldn't reach them. They were just like, you know how you go and you see something that's so far off in the distance, it becomes, can I ever reach it?
Yeah.
There was that when you're homeless and you're sleeping in the bottom of the stairs and you're trying to figure out how you're going to eat the next day, it becomes, how did you survive? So you become now in survival mode versus, I got to go and get this education or I got to go to school. I was never in a stable place when I was younger long enough to go to school. And so when you look at all of that, it becomes all of that in the mixing bowl. And how do you take everything that life has given to you that's in that bowl and make a cake out of it?
Beautiful. I mean, beautiful and touching and completely understandable. So for those people who are in unstable situations, whether it's they're homeless that are listening to this, whether they're just in an unstable situation where they're moving around a lot, what would be one thing that you would want to say to them right now, even before we get to your messaging and to your whole story? What was the thing that got you through, that you were able to say, I'm just going to make it. I just got to put one foot in front of the other and I just got to get through here. What gave you the strength to do that?
What gave me the strength to do that was my relationship with God.
Beautiful.
When my ex-husband left me and I was suicidal, it put me in a position that I had to replace him with something. And so for me, it became, what is that something? And
hold on, pause 1 minute. Because something just slipped into the conversation there when my ex-husband left me and I became suicidal. So you had gone through all of this adversity before. Had you ever been suicidal before that moment?
Oh, before my ex-husband left me?
Yeah.
No, never. I had never thought about it, had never attempted or anything. When he left me, remember now, I was 13 when I met him. I was 46 when I found out that he was having an affair.
Wow.
And so what that did was put me in downward spirals. I had never been by myself. I didn't even have an electric bill in my name. Everything was Mr. and Mrs. And so I had no identity as a woman. Nobody knew who Antoinette Huff was until August 20th, 2013.
And then the world knew. You went from nobody knowing to suddenly the whole world knowing. So,
Yes.
So I definitely want to get there because So from that place, tell me what you could have possibly felt to hear this. Here is somebody who is not just courageous, not just cool under pressure, but also has enough heart that that she could convince someone troubled that she really cared about him. That's someone who said that was Barack Obama, 44th President of the United States. How did it feel for you as a person that nobody had ever known who you were to suddenly have the President of the United States saying such things about you?
Well, first of all, it was Barack Obama, so that was just like, yes.
Right, right.
So I don't think you could have gotten that message from a better person when you're looking for that validation for him to come from. And not because he was the 44th president at the time, was because he was genuine, he was authentic, and he was speaking from the heart that at the end of the day, I want to tell you what I see in you.
Wow.
I don't think God could have set it up with anybody else to be able to tell me that in those moments and when I needed it the most. But it made me feel great. It made me feel great in the way of when you come from so much rejection and now hear someone say to you that you are more than the world could ever expect it. It was 8 months after Sandy Hook school shooting. And so it becomes this one lady without an AK-47, without any kind of weapon, took her compassion, confidence, and control and disarmed a young man who was troubled with an AK-47 and over 500 rounds of ammo with just compassion, confidence, and control. What a day to be able to call those my tough tactics today. And that's what I share with people. When I go and do my speaking events, when I go to schools and speak to students, whether I'm in corporations or organizations, I go back and teach them, what does tough tactics look like? We don't get that enough in this world today. People are so quick to judge you by your outer appearance. But what happens is, what's going on with me in my heart? See, that young man walked into the school. He passed several schools before he got to my school. He parked his car right next to my car. And then if that wasn't enough, I got that phone call from the bank wanting $14,000 in 7 days that delayed me from going to relieve the secretary for lunch. But it did for me, and that order was allow me to be able to be the one that the gunman greeted when he came into the room. I don't know how God could set that up no more beautiful than that.
Well, there are 1 million people plus that would probably say, I wish he had set it up, because if I didn't have that darn call, I would have been the one in the room. But the way you negotiated it, and something that you found in yourself, because I've heard some of your interviews in preparing for this, and people talk of the calm that was in your voice when you spoke. But tell me about what was going on inside of you when you hear people say that there was this calm exterior. What were you feeling inside?
I was screaming. Like, God, do you see what I see? What am I going to do with this, Lord? And yeah, he had already said, I'm mentally disturbed. I hadn't taken my medicine. He had shot out in the community several times. He had shot in the room with me several times. He's pacing to and fro in the room, allowing me to know that we all going to die today. I don't know what else you can say about that, but call on God. That's one day you want to say to anybody, I know you may need the Lord right now, but please don't interrupt my phone call, because I need a one-on-one conversation.
So I love your faith, and you can feel it in every word that you speak, even to this day. And yet, there's so many people that have gone through that would look at the adversity that you've gone through in your life, from being homeless to being in a situation where their husband cheats on them and leaves them empty and alone, to having the car company call and say, I want $14,000 or $15,000 in 7 days, or else we're going to take your car away. And they would look to that God and say, you know, hey, like, I love you, and why are you treating me like this? What gave you the courage to still believe and have faith in this God that was, to all outside eyes, not treating you in the best possible way?
Well, it wasn't God that wasn't treating me in the best possible way. It was my ex-husband who made the conscious decision. But what he did was forgot that we were best friends. We grew up together. We talked about everything. The weekend before when I found out he had an affair, we had just went out on a date. So there was nothing that gave me a clue that this was going on. I think what we do so many times as human beings is that we soak things up as a sponge, whether you're a female or a male, because males can get hurt just as much as females. So it doesn't have a gender to it. What it does have is to say that I'm a human being and I trusted someone with my most secret parts of me. And so when you do that and you open yourself up to be vulnerable, then it becomes something has to fill the gap in that so that you don't get to be where you're so overwhelmed. For me, I didn't do that. What I did was allow my husband at the time to get every piece of me, not saving a part of me for me.
Wow. Wow.
So that day for me, when the gunman did all that, I could see him and who he was because that was me 2 days before that. 2 days before that, I tried to commit suicide in Atlanta on one of the busiest streets in Atlanta. And that day was the day that I decided that I was going to walk on that street, walk out in front of cars. Now, one car hit me. And then I said, okay, I got it. I got it now. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk out in front of this bus, right, in front of this truck. And I know this truck is going to get me. I mean, I had it all planned out and everything. And the truck, and you know, trucks normally have to have like a whole yard before they can kind of stop. But this truck winds up going around me and all that. And I'm like, I can't even kill myself. I mean, I'm like, come on. But it wasn't my first attempt, but it was my last. Because that day, I didn't know on August the 18th, 2 days before that my life was going to change on August the 20th because God needed to save my life so that I could save over 870 innocent children, including the gunman. And so I would tell anybody today that no matter what it looks like for you, no matter what it feels like for you, know that your life is something important, but someone else needs your life to be able to save theirs.
If anybody is not listening, if anybody is listening and not feeling churched right now and schooled and understand the power that is possible in one moment, it's one of the things I talk about in my book, The Mosaic, that we are, if you think about a mosaic, you have a piece and it's surrounded by other pieces, but we're one piece away from an entirely new world. New world. We're one connection away from something else entirely happening. And so no matter where we sit in this moment, no matter what we think we are, who we are in this moment is only who we are in this moment. It's not who we are in the next moment.
That's right.
And you can feel the passion and the love and the compassion in Antoinette. And it's no wonder that she would take someone who was troubled and comfort him so much that he would drop his pain in front of her and help and allow her to help him get out of this situation. She became his truck driver that swerved around him and said, I remember you saying in one of your talks when you walked out in front of traffic, not today. This is not going to happen today. You're not going to, from a voice inside you, you're not going to die. We're not going to let you take yourself today. And so for people that are troubled, for people that are on the other side of that, for people who haven't seen that one moment where everything shifts, because you went from a woman in debt, a woman that was alone, a woman who had no real identity of who she was, in one, how long did the incident last with the shooter?
Well, the second, when you always hear the 911, that's the second call. There was a first call. So I was in there with him for almost an hour.
For an hour. But in 1 hour, everything in her life changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been that she wouldn't have been here anymore, because had she not had somehow the grace of God to be able to do what was right, to do the thing that would respond to that person, she wouldn't be here, and maybe 870 people in the school that she was in may not be here.
Mm-hmm.
Because from what you said, he had an AK-47 and tons of rounds of ammunition, right?
Correct. He had over 500 rounds.
Wow. So what in you allowed you to stop the screaming that was going on inside your head? I mean, were you afraid when you were in this situation?
No, I wasn't afraid of him or anything like that. I have to go back and listen to the 911 call myself, because everybody keeps saying to me, well, what did you say, or how did you do it? To be honest with you, I don't know. I had that relationship with God I could hear God. I mean, I was asking him what to say. How do I say it? What to do? How do I do it, Lord? You see this young man in front of me. What do I say to him? And so I have to go back and listen to, like, what did I say? Word by word by word, because I can't even tell you what I said. What I do know and do remember in all of it is that he was a 20-year-old young man. And so for me, I got children. I'm around children right now today. I've now gone back into that school district where the gunman held me hostage. I wanted to be able to allow other kids to know that they don't have to be the next gunman, that they got hope. And so on August the 18th, when I was trying to commit suicide, my principal and assistant principal that I go to the school now were teachers and assistant principal at that school. But they were really good friends. They were the only ones in the school that knew what I was going through. And so I called them up, and they was like, well, where you at? Where you at? And I wouldn't tell them.
Wow.
But they came and sent to look for me so that they could help save my life. Today, I go back into that school district, into that school with that principal and assistant principal now. And I've launched a mentoring program and a literacy program within that district where that gunman held me hostage. And the reason why I do that is because that gunman, Michael Hill, came into that school. He could have went to any school in that area because he passed several schools to get to me. But God knew in his sovereignty that if he had went to the other schools, he would have died that day, possibly. And so when you look at the connection and when God sets you up for a purpose in your life, then you got to go back and ask yourself why and what is it that I can do to change somebody's life. And so for me, I wanted to go back into that school district so that other kids don't have to feel like that. What was going on so much in that young man's life that he felt that he needed to come into that school with that AK-47?
Yeah.
What was going on so much in my life that I felt like I needed to commit suicide?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the foundation of them both, it's the same thing.
Same thing. I have the honor of having a 29-year-old developmentally delayed daughter. And I have to tell you, there were a lot of times along the way that I didn't think it was an honor. There were so many times I just couldn't understand it. My wife had passed away, and I was raising my daughter on my own. And she got into a phase where I was the one person that always could understand her somehow. She didn't speak like you and I speak. She spoke like someone almost had a stroke, and most people didn't understand her. And many times I didn't understand her either. But she went into for almost 3 or 4 years. She was having 3 or 4 tantrums a day. And after a certain amount of time, I said to myself, hold it. She's probably trying to say something to me, and I'm just not getting it. So I sat with her and I said, Elisa, are you trying to say something to me that I don't understand? And in the middle of her rise up to rage, she just smiled and said, yes, Daddy. And I said, are you saying it in a way that how are you telling me these things? Because I want to know how to hear you. And she just pointed to her head like this. And I said, you little son of a gun, are you putting thoughts in my head because I can't understand your your speech? And she said, yes, Daddy. And she started laughing from her belly, like, finally, I understood. She taught me such an interesting principle that I use in corporations or businesses or families. And because her actions are exactly what everybody does. When she speaks and she doesn't get heard, she talks louder because she thinks her volume is what's off. But it wasn't her volume, it was the language. I couldn't understand what she was saying. When she yells and she doesn't get heard, she creates a scene, which for her was a tantrum. But people do that in business. People do that in a workplace. The shooter came in with a gun. That's a scene, right? When that scene doesn't get heard, then they destroy something. And so you caught it between the scene and the destruction. Mm-hmm. Because you took the time to just listen to him. When I listened to that 911 call, you were always saying to him, what is it you want me to tell them? It might have been the first time he was ever listened to. And so the beauty of my daughter's rage was that she's never had a tantrum after that. Because now I understand the need of every single human being to be heard, mm-hmm. to be appreciated, to be loved, to be accepted. And why I love your story, like love it beyond love it, is because you are me, a more pretty version, a tanner version, a more alive version. But you are me doing the same thing. And it's that energy. What I want to I'm using the story to segue. Because we can talk about 2013 and that story forever, and it'll still have relevance. But really what I want to do is say, how do we take what happened there in 2013 and apply it to today? Because we are in a crazy situation today. You can't turn around without silos of like-minded people conflicting with other silos of like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And there's so much argument, so much disagreement, so much tension, so much hatred. How do we take Antoinette Huff and plant her in communities all around the world so that people can learn to just listen to the voice of God, hear what he wants to say? What would you say to people? How do we resolve this? We're in a terrorist situation. It just hasn't come to the point of destroying anything yet.
Yes.
It's come to the point of making a scene. We're making scenes now. We're screaming at each other. If you think of my daughter's example, she said something that doesn't hurt. They're screaming. We're definitely at the point. You listen to any news channel, both sides are screaming at each other. It doesn't matter which side you're on. People are trying to create scenes. Mm-hmm. How do you diffuse that? What is the work you're doing now that's helping to diffuse that?
Well, what I would say, the work that I'm doing now that helps diffuse that is my tough tactics, where I go into corporations. We're now developing an actual curriculum for schools. And so I go in and teach them, what does that compassion, confidence, and control look like? Wow. And compassion does not come into where you're tearing each other down. Compassion comes in to say that I see you. That no matter where you're at, no matter what's going on in your life, I'm not here to prejudge you. I'm not here to use judgment on you or pass judgment on you. I am here to love you for you and the state that you're in. And so for what we do, whether it's political, whether it's I'm in the workplace, whether it's I'm at home, in all areas of our lives, what we're always doing is looking for the next moment to manipulate the next moment to get the next moment up on the next person.
Say that again. We're looking for the next moment to manipulate the next moment.
Yeah.
To
be able to get the next moment to get ever to what we need to be able to do for ourselves. A lot of times what we do with it all is that no matter what it looks like for us, is we come in and say, what can you do that's going to help me from where I'm going? Or what is it that you can do to bring to the table? Not into where, okay, let's collaborate together to see how we can be able to help the next generation. They're going to be our future. We don't invest in our kids. We put computers in their hands. We put phones in their hands. And we're going on about our day. They're watching TV more. They're not reading. And so it becomes, what do we do to be able to help our children? but we can't help our kids if we need help ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help my child if I'm in an overload myself and needing someone to help me. And I can't help my child if no one never validated me, because how do I know how to validate my child? And so what I had to go back and look at in it all was that, how do I go back to be able to say, Antoinette, meet Antoinette, but Antoinette, love Antoinette. Because when I do that for me, then I can go back and teach my child how to do that for themselves. And then when I'm at work and an employee is saying, oh, I'm having this, or they bring somebody in, right? And we're thinking that that person is actually the person that's going to take over our job. For instance, I come in and I'm the VP, and they come in and they say, well, we're now going to bring in a director. And you're thinking, oh, they're bringing in a director, but they really want to bring in that person to take on my position. No, help that person out, collaborate, what it is that you need to have. How can I help you? Make a smooth transition to show people what you're doing every day. What we do is we hold everything for ourselves. I'm most definitely not going to show you, because you're not going to get my job.
Yeah.
So it becomes, how do we come back to be able to say, let me show you compassion in it. I don't have to worry about you taking my job, because I got confident in who I am. I'm confident in who I am. But then also I can have control of how I dictate what we're going to do because of the compassion and the confidence in it. And we just don't do that.
Yeah. So to people that, I mean, what you're saying is so beautiful and seems so simple and seems so obvious. But we live in silos of fear. We live protecting ourselves, not trusting the world around us. We assume so often that we don't live in a benevolent, kind world. We live in a confrontational world, mm-hmm. where we have to protect ourselves. And the thing that sings to me behind all the words that you say is when you say, I had to listen back to the 911 call because I didn't even know what I was saying. And part of my intuitive hit on that is because you weren't saying it. You were quiet and allowed God to speak through you.
Yes.
And it was as big a revelation to you as it was to everybody else, because that was just the voice coming through. You were open to that. You weren't. Fear would have closed you down.
That's
Fear
right.
would have tried to get you to protect yourself. Love opened you up. Yep. And made you see that this person who walked in was you a couple days ago.
Right.
So what's the formula of what? I love your branding, by the way, of Tough Tactics, because your last name's Tough, okay? So whoever came up with that, fabulous. What is the formula of your Tough Tactics? Is that something you can share with people here?
Yes, so what I do is I come in and I show them in my presentation, like the 911 call. So they're actually with me as if we were actually there on August 20th, 2013. So they're able to get a sneak preview of what that looked like. They're able to get video footage, live 911, hearing what that looked like on that day. And then we walk through the presentation and be able to show, okay, Antoinette, what's compassion? How do I have compassion when I got a disgruntled employee, or when I'm sitting there and I got an irate customer on the phone? Or if I'm in school and I got a parent who's fussing at me when she know her baby didn't get an A today because he ain't do his homework. So, becomes, what does that look like? And so we go through those things of showing you what compassion is and how do you deal with those things. And then we come over on the confidence side and be able to show you, like, okay, what does that look like? How do I have confidence? Me and my husband just argued on my way to work. My kids wouldn't listen to me when I got here. Then I got here and my boss told me that I don't have a job anymore. Or they just took my actual position and gave it to someone else. How do I have confidence in the midst of everyday life? What does that look like for me? And so we go through some of those things there, and I bring in the audience. And then we come back and say, how do I have control in it all? What does that control is? How do I have control in all the things that life gives me every day, and know that at the end of the day, no matter what it looks like for me, no matter what it feels like for me, I'm still in control of the midst of it all. And sometimes that's hard when you put it all in a mixing bowl.
Yeah.
And try to take out of it.
And how long are these presentations? Are they like 6-month presentations, or is this like, are you getting all this done in like a few hours?
So what we do is we do hour presentations.
Wow.
And so what I normally do is do about 45 minutes to 50 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and do some Q&A where the audience can come in and ask questions. We also come in and sell my book at wholesale, where they can get the book at wholesale, and I autograph the books there. The other thing is that I even bring my audience on stage with me. So sometimes, you know how you always had this talent that you wanted to do, right? And so we go through the tough tactics, but it's not a reality until you can act it out.
Totally.
And so they get an opportunity to kind of bring their talents on stage and say, okay, this is what I would do if I was dealing with tough tactics today, and I got this irate client on the phone with me, or I got this, parent right here that's going off, how would I respond to it? So we would let them sit down and then let the other person act out the irate customer or, the parent that's screaming, and then see how they react to it. Do they use tough tactics, what we just went over, in the presentation in that moment? Or do they go back to their own normal self and be like, I ain't dealing with it, to throw up their hands, I don't want nothing to do with it. And so what we do with it all is just be able to come back and show you what to do step by step with tough tactics.
And so if someone wants to bring you in, is there a certain type of organization or school or government or business? Do you work in one dimension, or do you find that these things that you've discovered through your negotiation on August 20th with that man who was about to shoot a school full of kids and adults, and nothing happened? You ended that conflict with nobody, nothing in the history of the United States. Unfortunately, we have the history of the United States of gunmen coming into schools. I hope that ends soon. But there's never been a situation that ended like that. So do you find that these techniques that you were given really can go into any place? Can they go into who would hire you is what I'm guessing, a long question to ask. Who would hire you?
Well, I've gone into schools. I've done women conferences. We've gone in to do things on mental health. I've actually gone in to do things in corporations and businesses, security. We've done safety conferences and all that. So I go into all facets of actual organizations and businesses and schools, and churches and women's groups. I've done actual associations. So it's not where you can say this only fits this group. No matter what part of our business that we're in, it's always about security. It's all about safety. It's always about that disgruntled employee that you got there, or that client that you just came in, or that customer that just came in. How do you deal with all that? So when I come in with my presentation, it fits everybody, no matter where you're at. We even come in with children and be able to talk about the bullying aspect, the suicide aspect. I deal with kids now in my actual mentoring and literacy program. They're homeless kids and foster kids. And so I can relate to all that. So it becomes, no matter which platform that I'm on, we come back and make sure that everybody in the audience is going to get something to take away. They're going to get some tough tactics to be able to say, I can do that. I can really do that. So, yes.
So in the little that I've seen of you preparing for this, and I did my homework a little bit, one of the things that I was intrigued by is some of your messaging is not so much about who the person is that you're that's in conflict or going through that, as much as who's the person that you are individually and how you come to the table and show up. Because even in your conversation here, if you come without confidence, if you come up scared, if you come up with fear, if you come up not loving, if you come up not being able to see the person you're looking at, then your results will be different, or the way you perform will be different in that situation. So is a lot of the work you do secretly or under the covers work on an individual to be stronger in themselves or have more faith?
I won't tell anybody where your faith is. I believe in God. That God has just helped me out tremendously. Whatever your higher being is, or whatever that looks like for you, that's what you work on. But what I will tell you in the midst of it all is that if you never work on yourself, if you never go back and look at yourself in the mirror to introduce yourself to yourself, it's going to always feel like you're always pushing against the grain. You got to always go back and evaluate yourself. What I always do for myself to walk myself through year by year, I always ask God to give me 2 words that keep me focused, to keep me in line with what I need to do to make sure that I'm always pleasing Him first, but also so knowing who I am. It's important now to know who you are. I didn't know that. It took me 7 years to get here.
Yeah.
I want to help everybody else that you can get there in 7 hours. 7 minutes is even greater.
I love that.
7 years.
I love that, because one of the things that I talk about in my book, The Mosaic, which is really just a fable. It's not a self-help book. But one of the things that I realized through it is when we think of connection, we immediately think, well, it's connection to another person. But what The Mosaic showed me is that's the 4th connection. That's not the first. Mm-hmm. The first connection is we have to be connected to ourselves.
That's right.
We have to see ourselves, know ourselves, be okay with ourselves, love ourselves, and be kind to ourselves. Because when we're not kind to ourselves, it's impossible for us to be kind to other people.
Correct.
The next connection is to connection to source, to knowing that even though we're connected to ourselves, there's something much greater than us. Call it God, call it universe, call it whatever the heck you want to call it. I don't know why we can't just call it God, because that's what it is. But right, this beautiful presence, there's something bigger than us that's watching over the world. Mm-hmm. The third connection is our connection to purpose. And one of the things I love about your life is how your purpose completely changed on that day. Even though because of your connection to self, because of your connection to source, you were given a new purpose which came on August 20th, 2013. And it's only because you had connection to self and connection to source that you were able to see that and open to receive it. And only then, when we have connection to self, source, purpose, are we able to then connect to other people. And those connections are so deep. And some of the work that I feel you're doing is helping people connect to self, connect to source, connect to their purpose, and then connect to each other and make a team function better when they're connected in that way. That's why I loved you for this podcast. That's why I love you in general, because out of nowhere, I want people to understand I didn't hear about you in 2013. I hear about you now. Mm-hmm. And I want the new wave of Antoinette Huff people to come in now, because it's time. The world needs her as much as it's ever needed her before. Because if we don't resolve this conflict, if we don't resolve what my daughter taught me, of saying what we need and not being heard, mm-hmm. screaming what we need and not being heard, creating a scene and not being heard, there will be destruction. There will somehow, that's what a terrorist will do, or a gunman will do, or all of that. So we're coming to the end. I want to, because I want to honor your time, I want to ask you in closing a couple of questions, and then I want to make sure people have all the information, and we'll put it underneath for sure, okay? Tell me more about the work that you're doing right now before I ask you my final questions. What is it that are you still in the school office? Are you still a bookkeeper in school? Have you built an organization? Tell me about the work you're doing in your nonprofits.
So, and my nonprofit is called Kids on the Move for Success. And when I first started that nonprofit on Anderson Cooper, donated to me from all over the world. When I first started, we started out with scholarships to kids. Now we have expanded it. And so now I do Discovery STEAM mentoring program, where we mentor kids based off of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And then I do Knowledge is Powerful and Literacy, where we teach children how to read. We do financial literacy, we do reading literacy, and we also come back and get them on grade level. And then we also do my Tough Tactics curriculum. And that's the soft skills and getting them with those emotional skills. One of the things that I'm finding out, I now run both of my organizations. So I run my nonprofit organization, Kids on the Move for Success, where we go back into the school, and then I do my speaking career, my book, and my movie, which is called Faith Under Fire, where we got the Christian Award for Best Movie.
Hold that guy up. I saw that before. I want to see that.
Yes, I'm loving this Christopher Award. Yes. So that's what we do with my movie, which is called Faith Under Fire, where Tony Braxton is playing me. We did 8 million views. It's all based off of my book, Prepared for a Purpose. And I would say to people, if you want a copy of it, go to my website, AntoinetteHuff.com, and I will send you an autographed copy of it so that you can be able to see it and have it personalized to you and all that. But I wanted to be able to come back with all that and say, how can I impact adults on my Antoinette Huff side, but also how can I still have what my passion is love for children. And I do that with my Kids on the Move for Success side. I decided to go back into that school district where the gunman held me hostage, and back to where the principal and assistant principal helped save my life when I was suicidal, and where we have foster kids and homeless kids. They all live in at-risk communities, so they can't afford to go outside of that community and do different things with them. So I bring that into them and show them what they could have outside of their communities on an everyday basis. I have youth trailblazers so those kids that were with me in elementary school, they are now youth and adults. And so they come back with me and help me with my babies in my literacy program and my mentoring program. So they're like my peers to peers. And we also go to the state legislature and talk about gun violence. We talk about violence in our schools, violence in our community, passing gun laws and all that. And so we have town hall meetings with them. I allow my kids to be able to have a voice and, what does that look like in the safety, bullying in schools, suicide in the schools, things that they're dealing with every day. So on my Kids on the Move for Success side, we come back and just empower children. And the way that I'm able to do that is people come back and they go on my kidsonthemoveforsuccess.org, and they become one of my movers and shakers, and they give to me on a monthly basis for me to be able to go back and give to kids. They come back and say, well, Antoinette, I want to do it one time, so they donate one time, or they give in-kind donations to me. And so we take all of those funds and give it back to children. This year, we're looking at expanding it. So we've been doing 1 day a week, and I want to expand it to 4 days a week.
Wow.
And so I realized that my kids can't read. And in order for me to do that, I need to be able to hire some people in to come into my organization to take those 4 days to be able to teach those kids how to read. And so now what we're doing is actually asking people to come in and come into our Movers and Shakers Corner, come in and, be and collaborate with us and be our sponsors and all that, so that we can bring in now 2 employees and 3 employees to be able to help us with that, and a director can be able to be on ground every day to make sure that we're giving our students a fair chance to fight. They don't have a fair chance to be able to say that I can't do this, I can't read. I got elementary kids that are in 5th grade reading at kindergarten level. Yeah. We need to be able to let them see that now I hear your voice, but I also want to make sure that you're academic ready, because when you do that, we don't have behavior issues. We don't have gunmen. We don't have people coming in and having be outrated customers and disgruntled employees. Why? Because we got them in the foundation of elementary school. So they come in being that productive adult, that adult that comes in and say, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't work at McDonald's, I own McDonald's. And the way we do that is to be able to come back and say that I hear you in elementary school. And so the thing that I'm fighting for today is being able to allow my kids to be heard, fighting to have the collaborations here in the Atlanta area. And for those all over the world to come back and say, Antoinette, I'm going to take my dollars and invest in you. I want to take 10% of our budget and be able to give back to staff and be able to bring somebody in. But 90% of that, I want to give back to my kids.
Love it.
I have one young lady now who's actually been in my, that we've given a scholarship to. She graduated this year. And we have given her a scholarship through her whole academic career and her being, graduating from college. And I want to be able to do more of that. I want to be able to come in and say, write that big check and say, here, you want to go to school? Here's all your tuition. All I ask you to do is come back and pay it forward to the next child. How can we do that? And we only can do that when we be able to help those who will be watching this podcast to say, Antoinette, I believe in what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing, and I want to support what you're doing.
I want to encourage anyone who has ears to hear this podcast and do exactly what Antoinette just said. I want you to believe in this work that she's doing. I want you to support this work that she's doing. And I want you to stand up, even if it's with $1, $5, $10 a month, whatever it is. I want you to start to become a part of this work, because our future starts with our children.
Yes.
And if we take care of our children, our future will take care of itself. And so one of the beautiful things that I was hoping you would talk to, if people go to your website, they will see these programs outlined. They will see ways to contribute. They will see that. Is that true?
Yeah. So when they go to my kidsonthemoveforsuccess.org, we have different programs. We have ways that you can give, whether you want to invest, whether you want to give on in-kind, whether you want to do a one-time donation. So all of that is on the website. They don't have to be trying to figure out, like, okay, Antoinette, what do I do? How do I give? I want to give, but I don't know how to give. What does that look like, Antoinette? How do I come back to support you? If they go to my website, they see all of that.
Good.
They're able to see from, what are we doing in the community? What is our work that we're doing? How do they take action? Then they're able to come back and see, what about us? They can see all of that within that. And then in our ways to give, they can say, okay, I want to donate. We have different giving options that they can do. They can say, okay, I want to be a sponsor, or I want to be a partner with you. We even have it to where, say like you work at AT&T or you work for any organization. And organizations give back. So they say, oh, you know what? I would love to give, but I don't know how to give. They can go back on our website and be able to match their dollars with their actual company. And they can be able to give that way. And so we have all different kind of ways that they can be able to give, donate to us, and everything. What I would say to anybody is, if you're not for sure and you just want to come and just be a part of us, give us a call. They can call us at 470-222-3410, and one of us will be delighted to be able to help you. And if you say, okay, Antoinette, I want to do the employee match, they can come over and do that. Click on the button, type in their actual name of their organization. It'll tell them what to do if they're not for sure. Donate, double the donation so that they can donate and see if their organization is a part of it. So yes, we take it all. $1 will get a pencil for a baby. We take every dollar. So school supplies.
So I want to close now, because I want to with the one question that I always ask, and then it's followed up with another question. When you look at the world that's out there today, and I know we've made big advances in some things, but we've made not such big advances in other things. Is this the world that you always dreamed of handing over to your children and to your children's children?
No.
What would be the one thing that we could do that would turn this world in the right direction, from a world we don't want to hand over to our children and our children's children to a world that we do want to hand over to our children's children? What would that one thing from your perspective be?
Invest in our children.
Fabulous.
Because they're going to be our future. And when we invest in them, then we're going to be able to see a ripple effect, a domino effect, because once you invest in one child, that child would be able to have the impact of what you've done to be able to come back and say, I'm going to invest in the next one. I have kids now in my program. They're in 11th and 12th grade, and their mothers found out that I was back in Atlanta. They drive 2 hours to get to my program. Why? Because I invested in their child in elementary. And so when they were in middle school and high school, they came back to remember the investment, and they bring them over to my program. Why? So they can continue to invest in others. So they come back and we do a domino effect to be able to invest in the next generation.
Love it. So in closing up for me, what I just want to capsulize this and say, it's hard for me to imagine that you've heard this hour or so of conversation and you are not motivated to want to be a part of the work that Antoinette's doing. And I encourage you, everyone who is listening, to call the number that she had. And we'll put all the information, we'll put all the websites down below. We'll make sure you have all the possible ways to do it. But for those of you who are down, remember, you're just one connection away. You're one situation, one day away from someone who was about to commit suicide, 2 days away, to an event happening that so changed the course of her life that she's now helping people in such a big way that President Barack Obama would call her and say these words to her. Everything changes. What we see is only what we see right now. It isn't what we see. It isn't what is. It's only what we see right now. There's so many different perspectives, so many different ways to get involved. Antoinette, I want to talk with you under separate cover about a work that I'm doing called the Mosaic Swarm, which is how to take the problems that exist in the world today. Mm-hmm. And as a people, not an organization, not a government, not a charity, but as a people, how do we solve those problems together? And I'm excited to talk more with you because I love, this is about seeing if there's harmony and resonance, and I love your spirit. Your spirit, I want to help that spirit ignite so that everybody can feel it, everybody can sense it, everybody can see it, because the work you're doing is so magnificent. So please, everybody listening, get in touch with her. The contact information will be down below. And just take a moment to realize the life you see right now is only the life you see right now. It is not the life that is. And allow the life that is to come into your life and transform you like the shining light Antoinette Huff has done for herself and for the rest of the world. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the Mosaic Podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to know you even for just an hour. And I hope that this will be the beginning of our conversations, not the end.
You're stuck with me now. You can't go anywhere.
There could be no peace that I would rather be stuck with than you. I love it.
Stuck with me now, Daniel.
So for those who are listening, I want to thank you also for listening, for sharing your time with us. I want you to remember that we are all connected. And remember, as when Mo's father has passed away and reappears to him, remember the message that he says to him, that nothing is as it seems. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on the Mosaic Podcast. Bless you.